Good morning. Thanks for dialing in this morning. We're just going to hold the space as people are piling into the event and start in a couple of minutes. Sorry, not in a couple of minutes. Start shortly once numbers get up a little bit. I'm watching the calendar tick over at 45, dialing in. So just going to hold that space. We've got some 200 plus registered for the webinar this morning. So just wanting a few more to dial in before we get too far and kicking off. So just going to hold the silence, opportunity to let go of that last meeting and give 100% of your focus on the great content we've got coming this morning. Thanks for those of you that have just joined in. Just going to hold the space for another 30 seconds or so before we kick off. We're at 75 people having rolled in this morning. Just looking for a couple more of the 200 before we kick off, so thank you. So I am going to kick us off now. So tēnā koutou katoa, ko pubu tākau ingoa. For those of you that I haven't met before, I am privileged to lead EECA's business engagement program. I have a series of regional managers and industry and sector leads within the team driving that engagement program. And so I'm going to facilitate this morning's market update for us, and Mason's just going to flick to the next slide for a little bit of housekeeping. So this session is being recorded and we will make it available afterwards. We've already hit the record button. We are using Q&A, so please do not put your questions into the chat. If you're not familiar with using Zoom, when you take your mouse down to the bottom and the bar comes up, if Q&A isn't showing to start with, click on the circle with the 3 dots saying more and the Q&A function is there. The benefit in the Q&A is you can all see the Q&A, and so you can see what questions others are asking. Any questions that we don't get the opportunity to answer through the session, we will answer some immediately and some in the Q&A session towards the end. We will be putting answers up and that will come out along with the recording of the webinar afterwards. There will also be a short survey on this webinar because we do want to make sure that the content is on point and you're seeing the value and taking some time out of your day to listen to the messages that we've got to share. Without further ado, I'll pass over to Dr. Marcus Pelenur, our Chief Executive, to bring the first segment of the seminar.
Okay, kia ora koutou. I hope everyone is well. It is typical Wellington summer here with high winds and rain. The wife was like, "Oh, you should put the sprinklers on because it's going to be dry." I'm like, no, it'll be fine. And yeah, sure enough, it is fine. So thank you everybody for your time. It is a commitment, but we are really excited to talk through what's on the horizon for EECA. I'm going to keep it fairly high level, and the rest of the team will go into details of what we're up to and how it affects the market. I'll also be giving some thoughts on broadly the energy space and what's happening around New Zealand. Next slide, please. So we have been focused on helping businesses, particularly through the last winter crunch, from awareness to action. And it's been a bit of a quiet piece of work for us, very much boots on the ground running workshops, but I'm really proud of what we've achieved here. We've got 58 gas using businesses that have gone through our walkthrough assessments. They typically find 10 to 30% off of their energy costs through that. So it's a great example of EECA helping right now. We have support and we are here to help organizations and businesses plan for the transition, plan for what next. And just to address the LNG question, LNG is not going to, an LNG import terminal is not going to be a bridge back to an era of cheap gas where we were seeing contracts, between $8 to $12 a GJ. So it is our view, it's my view, that the price of gas will still be uncomfortably high, even as LNG is used to provide stronger security of supply and is used primarily to address the dry year risk for the electricity system. So if you are working with C&I businesses and you're out in the market and people are saying, well, gas is sorted because LNG is coming, I would challenge that. I think there is still a very pressing need for us to plan and or for businesses to plan on what they want to do to get off gas. And we are here at EECA to help with that. So it's not you have to do it on your own. It is, and you don't have to do it, at a great cost. It's about having a deliberate plan for your pieces of kit, for your process, and for your organization. So I just really wanted to address that high piece there around, the intersection between LNG and businesses. The good news is that we think there are a whole range of proven technologies that are available right now that can be used. And so talk to our good folks on the ground in the regional and sector partnerships team and Paul, and they will help you out. Next slide, please. All right, that was probably like my slightly darker, gloomier start, but I do want to kind of put some of the things that I'm really proud of that we started the year with a bang, and we are rolling through the year with a bang. So there's three big areas that we're focusing on, right? Energy efficiency first comes at no surprise because the opportunity is so large. So a lot of the work we do here is very kind of boring, but yet critically important machinery of government things like regulations, standards. So energy efficiency first, we have signed off with the Aussies the standard strategic plan. So this is the plan that lays out how energy standards are going to be developed across products for both Australia and New Zealand. We developed these standards together, and it's pretty significant because it enables all the wheels of the regulator, of which we are one of, product regulator, to start moving. So expect to see those wheels turn here in New Zealand for us. I'll be heading over to Australia next week, and part of my conversations there will be talking to the E3 regulators to make sure we're aligned on the direction of travel. So the key big one for us is around flexibility and how do we enable flexibility. So I'll go into a bit more detail for that. So really good to have that strategic plan signed off. Energy efficiency first. The second big thing that we are focused on is around enabling a smart electricity system. So we think there's huge benefits to be had around unlocking the best use of electricity. And so on that, we've launched a big piece of research, which I'll go into more detail on. We've also kicked off a V2G, which we're now pivoting to a vehicle to everything type of pilot in Queenstown, where there's a lot of congestion, and we're looking to expand that in Auckland. I also opened up in Silverstream this high-powered EV charging hub for basically kind of medium to larger trucks and vehicles. And so it was the first for a waste facility and has really high replication potential. And so we see that if you do that right, it's not just about electric transport, it's about flexibility, using the batteries to improve resilience, and then going back to the grid. So that was this month. And then finally, energy efficiency first, smart electricity use. And the third focus for us is around clean fuels. And we've got a whole package around just trying to give people more options, give businesses more options, give the market choices. So we are looking to increase the energy pie. And particularly we're doing that through clean fuels, bioenergy, which is biomass, biogas, and also solar. And so the Solar on Farms program, which we launched a few months before the end of the year, we're now into actually setting up those systems, and it is a full demonstration program. We are working with the farms to get the data, understand the costs and benefits for them. And what I'm hoping we will do is really be able to make the case for solar on business. And there are some areas that are really clearly already well understood. You look at the rooftops of the warehouse, but there's a whole bunch of other businesses that we think are ripe to benefit from solar that haven't yet sort of got enough confidence in the benefits to make the investment. So we want to help bridge that. Next slide, please. So flexibility, this is a high level, again, we will be advocating strongly from the corner of the energy user. We at EECA, I'm passionate about making energy work for people and businesses. And the LNG is a supply side intervention. We think there is also complementary, it's not either or, but complementary, a very strong demand side intervention that we need to have, and that's around flexibility. And we just published a report showing that about 25% of peak demand can be shifted. We're not talking about deindustrialization or folks shutting down production lines. It's just around smart flexibility off the peaks. And that is the most costliest part of maintaining your sub-transmission distribution networks. And so if we can shift those peaks, we estimate it's a $3 billion savings off the networks. And that's likely conservative because I'm not even talking about the other savings that people will do by just being smarter with their electricity and energy use. So we've published a report and we've got about 6 different trials going on at the moment with EDBs. We're looking to expand with retailers and aggregators. We want to really push and unlock the demand side opportunity because we think the benefits for the users are very real. Slide, please. Did I save the best for last? I did. Okay. So public service announcement, our levy consultation is out. It's open until the 8th of March. It spells out in much more detail what we plan to do through the levy. The work we do has a very strong value for money measurements and ROIs. So I invite everyone to read through the consultation document and provide and submit feedback one way or the other. That is me. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Marcos. And I'm going to hand now over to Vince to get us into a little bit of the detail. As Marcus said, he's at the high level. Vince is going to take us through a little bit more of the detail around how to save that 25% in our peak period. Vince, over to you.
Yep, thanks, Paul. So yeah, as Marcos mentioned, we believe there's a lot of value in flexibility, and but I guess when we kicked this project off, we talked to lots of the market, and we got a lot of different views about how much there was and how much value it had. So what we wanted to do was create a really solid evidence base that enabled us to kind of put some numbers and some value around these things. Next slide, please, Mason. So yeah, this is the name of the report. It's a culmination of about a year's worth of work and quite detailed sort of modelling. So we're just going to dig into sort of scratch the surface today, but it's all sort of published on our website and that kind of thing. So and we're happy to talk more in more detail. Next slide, please. So first of all, when we're talking about distributed flexibility, this is an umbrella term for all the sorts of load shifting and storage and DER and all those sorts of things. And we're talking about moving energy that you might have otherwise used during peak times to a different part of the day. And that's generally about avoiding these big peaks, although in the future it may also be about absorbing sort of excess, particularly solar generation in the middle of the day and that sort of thing. Next slide, please. So the technology that we're talking about in terms of homes, we're talking about hot water storage, we're talking about home solar and battery, and we're talking about EVs, EV chargers, and potentially V2G at some point. For businesses, it tends to be sort of slightly bigger stuff. Again, you get hot water storage, but a much bigger version. You might have sort of intermediate products that you can store in a hopper and keep the rest of the process running while sort of temporarily shutting down a big chipper or something like that. You might be able to store products on site that that you can ship out a bit later on. Or you could get into sort of large-scale batteries. Next slide, please. So understanding the potential, the first step was to understand the load itself. So where does the peak come from? What sector, what region, what end use? And so we did quite a lot of work breaking down the sort of these load profiles to get to the sort of understanding. And I mean, the results are not hugely surprising. The residential has a big impact on the winter peak, but it's actually still, it's no more than, say, a third of that peak. So there's a lot of other things that aren't residential that also probably need to play a part if we're going to manage these peaks well. Next slide, please. So we also wanted to talk to customers, and in particular, we spoke to industrial customers. And it was quite an interesting story here because a lot of them said, "Hey, we can't change our operations. We don't like to change our operations, whatever the price is." And that suggests like a low amount of flexibility. But on the other hand, lots of them were very willing to invest in and engage with demand side flexibility if there was money on the table, if you could do it, that would save you more money than it cost you, and it didn't have a huge impact on production. And so that's I guess key for particularly industrial flexibility is keeping those two things in mind, and making sure that businesses can still use the energy for what they need it for in the first place. Next slide, please. So the core, I guess, of the research was running this model. It came out of California, was adapted to New Zealand. And really what the model does is it looks for opportunities to shift load away from a peak to either a time that's a bit later or a time that's a bit earlier. And having found those opportunities, what it is then able to do is take a stack of technology and sort of work out what the optimum collection of that technology might be to deploy, and then it can look at what's the sort of the net cost to do that. So it gives us quite sort of really detailed quantification, and we can look at different scenarios, different assumptions, and we can update it over time as say the cost of batteries or the costs of other types of technology might change. So yeah, that's a really key part of how the model works, and yeah, we hope to be able to continue to expand on that use. Next slide, please. So I guess the headline results, the sort of 25% figure, which it corresponds to this 1,700 to 1,900 megawatts. Which is, I guess for context, that's roughly twice what you might get out of Huntly Power Station. It's a big number, and it's a lot more than the sort of estimates that have sort of floated around previously, which are sort of, in the sort of small hundreds of megawatts. There's this value of $3 billion. Again, it's about how much the cost of the system might reduce if you had the peak that was smaller. Although another way to look at it is as we electrify, as we grow our load, if we can stop the peak from rising as quickly as it might otherwise do, then we don't have to expand the network as much. And that's where some of the real value might come from. And I guess the clarification here, the 1700 to 1900 megawatts, that is shiftable load. So that's continuing to use the power, but at a slightly different time. The model also found us another 500 megawatts of what we call curtailable load, which is the sort of stuff you might use in emergencies. But we obviously would want to keep that as a last resort in order to keep the rest of the lights on, if you like, at particular times. Next slide, please. So these charts are just an example of what you find in the reports, but and they're a little bit complicated, I apologize, but if we look at, say, the left-hand chart, the dark purple is the existing load, the shape of existing load. So you'll see kind of quite a long peak out to 6,000 or 7,000 megawatts, and sort of a spiky bit, say between 3,000 and 4,000 megawatts, and another one at about 5,500. And what the model is doing is it's just condensing that distribution and towards the middle between, say, 4,500 and 5,500, which is a much easier place to run the system than either the top end or the bottom end. And so this is kind of the impact of flexibility on the shape of load, and hopefully that sort of makes the system sort of easier and cheaper to run. And we shouldn't need as much of the peaking and as much of the grid expansion that we might otherwise. Next slide, please. And the other key question that we wanted to ask, not only how much is there, but how much does it cost? And I guess what we found from the modeling results is that if we were to use distributed flexibility at the same sort of quantity as we were using gas peaking plants in 2023, that the estimated cost of that, the average cost of that would be $77 a megawatt hour for a total cost of 71 million. And that is just over $100 million less than the estimated cost of doing it as we currently do with gas peaking plants, assuming gas is $15 a gigajoule, which it was in 2025. So yeah, if we were to go and deploy a bunch of DF that can replace this gas peaking plant, we'd be saving the electricity system sort of over $100 million a year. Next slide, please. And this again it's results from the model, but it's what the model. One of the key outputs of the model is a sort of a supply curve for DF, broken down by sector and by the sort of the additional incentive payment that you might need to make. So you can see there's quite a bit there at the low end of the curve, and that's some of your things like hot water storage that's either in place already or it's relatively cheap. And then at the top end of the curve, you're getting into sort of bespoke batteries and maybe significant process changes. And I guess the other thing that we're showing here is on the left-hand side, we've got 2023, so the existing system, and on the right-hand side, the supply given 2040. So we're seeing significantly more DF arriving over time and getting cheaper as well. And some of that is just about batteries, but also as things like transport and other uses electrify and then become available for DF. Next slide, please. So yeah, as I said, all of these reports are there on our website. And I just note that there's a core report that's a sort of a summary, but then underneath that, there's another 3 sort of technical reports where all the detail is to your heart's content, I guess. And that, I think, is me.
Vince, just like to remind everyone, Vince is staying online. So please jump into the Q&A if you've got a question for Vince on some of the material. He's happy to go into a little bit more of the technical stuff. And for those of you that are new to the space, when he talks about the term battery, I guess many of us think of a battery in that traditional sense, and while there was a picture of some containerized batteries, it also can be thermal storage. I think we're already seeing a few customers using water storage tanks as their thermal storage and trying to shift to cheaper times in the day. Without further ado, though, I am going to pass over to Caroline to talk about our vehicle to grid trials. And I know she's just come from a project meeting earlier this week in Queenstown where the trials are underway. So over to you, Caroline.
Tēnā koutou, everyone. So I'm EECA's Standards and Technical Manager, and I'm just going to talk briefly about a little bit of work we've got underway in the vehicle to grid space. So I guess vehicle to grid technology is I guess one way to look at or take advantage of this demand flexibility opportunity that exists. So for those who don't know what a vehicle to grid charger is, it's a smart charger that allows electric vehicles to both draw electricity from and return electricity to the grid. So that means that an EV can store electricity in its battery during off-peak periods and then feed it back into a home, a business, the network when demand is high. So next slide, please. I'm going to talk about two sort of bits of work that we've got underway. So this technology is really in its infancy in New Zealand. So what we are doing is we're collaborating with a number of parties, so Rewiring Aotearoa. We've also got McKay Electrical and Retna Consulting working with us to trial the use of vehicle to grid chargers in Queenstown. So we're installing sort of 30 to 40 chargers, and we're looking at how consumers engage with it, the different use cases, issues that we might find around installing them, integrating them, the software, all of the different bits to actually make it work for a consumer, network issues that it could solve, or pricing issues, load management issues. So it's really a sort of an exploratory piece of work, but over the next 1 to 2 years, we are going to be publishing a series of insights on that. And I guess the picture there is just the first charger that has been installed. So that's a bit of a milestone for that project. But obviously, Queenstown is just one part of New Zealand. 30 chargers or 40 chargers can't answer all the questions. So if we turn to the next slide, we're also looking to, we've put out an RFI recently, and we're wanting to understand what else would be valuable to do in terms of trials in New Zealand. So we're particularly interested in urban areas. Marcos mentioned Auckland, but urban areas generally. And we'd like to hear from organisations in the energy sector, businesses, community organisations, installation companies who are interested in participating and trialling this V2X, V2 grid technology. So we're looking for different, I guess, use cases, different regions, opportunities for collaboration and co-contribution. So this RFI closes on the 16th of March. We've just put the link to the GETS opportunity, but there is also information on EECA's website as well. So when we're happy to talk to anyone who's interested in finding out more. That's me. It's just short and sweet.
Before you go, I am going to ask you a question on the V2G trial, which I probably know the answer to, but just want to make sure everyone's across it. So with 30 to 40, I'm guessing we're already facing the challenge of someone turning up with a first-gen battery electric vehicle and the vehicle not being capable of discharging energy?
Yeah, so I guess the trial, there's a lot of matching going on. You've got different chargers. I mean, some of the technology's out there, but hasn't been really deployed in any quantity in New Zealand. But I guess matching chargers and the charger types with vehicles, and vehicles are all in different stages of understanding or being able to work with a vehicle to grid charger. So some manufacturers are more keen than others. There are sort of issues around warranties and just making it, I guess, making it work. So there's some issues there, and just making sure there's also the value for the end user and the platforms and the tariffs that they need to get the benefit from this technology. So some people are interested in it from a resilience perspective. Maybe this could help me if I'm in an area where there's power disruptions or congestion or network capacity issues. And some people are, thinking, well, maybe I could get more interested in it from the kind of selling electricity back to the grid, or, shaving off their own peak demand or self-consumption. So just trying to match all of the pieces together to give a good outcome to the end users is kind of the aim of the trial. And it's definitely, I think we're going to have a lot of learnings, but it's, I think, also got a lot of potential. So we're really keen to sort of make it work and then find other opportunities and use cases elsewhere in New Zealand where, we can demonstrate this potential, I guess.
Looking forward to seeing some of those data insights and the insight piece that comes out of the end of the trial, which will help largely inform a lot of people as the technology becomes more affordable in terms of the two-way charger versus the standard charger most people have today, which just charges your vehicle. So certainly exciting times. Again, please feel free to dump your question into the Q&A. Caroline's also going to be online. I see there's some great questions for Vince to start typing some answers, and some of them we'll talk to in a live response towards the end of the session. Please don't put the question in the chat. Tom is monitoring the chat and asking anyone that has to transfer it across to the Q&A. That way everyone can see it. Next slide. Thanks, Mason. And so I will be taking the next section and just giving a bit of a business support update. And we'll jump to the next slide. For those that weren't in the market update last session, just going to quickly recap on the challenges that the energy system is facing. And Marcus touched a little bit on LNG, and I will get to that in a couple of slides as well. So for industrial, commercial and residential in the North Island, natural gas is an energy form used in the home. For those in the South Island, it's an important part of electricity generation when there's no water or it's a dry year. But as this graph shows, the forecast for natural gas is falling, and that gets revised regularly. MB are currently working on a revision, and I've seen indications that will be coming out very shortly. If I've got my pessimistic hat on, the line's probably going to drop even further than it has every other time there's been a redetermination of the gas reserves in the ground that we've got, which just means that available gas out into 2040 and beyond comes further forward, which means we need alternates for those that are using the gas, hence why the LNG, and I'll get to that in about a minute. Next slide. Thanks, Mason. And so the challenge when you look at this graph is if you add up each of those three lines, it adds to about 150 petajoules. On the previous graph in 2040, it was showing about 20 petajoules. And so somehow there needs to be the squeezing of that demand. Lots of talk in the media when you look at one of these lines being the non-energy use. That's the likes of the Methanex, the Balancers, and a couple of others that use natural gas as a feedstock to make their finished product. And so there's lots to talk about when they might cease taking gas. And clearly at the point they stop, then that line would disappear. Electricity generation is obviously a large portion of that. And if there's alternates to not burning gas to cover for dry year or intermittent energy supply, then that line might disappear. That leaves the energy use for industrial, commercial, and residential, and currently sitting at around 70 PJ a year, and so that 70 PJ needs to get down to 20. And so EECA's work program in the space that the regional sector team, working with a number of businesses on what that alternate is, and there are a number of alternates for businesses today that, from an energy fuel perspective, are cost effective, and then it just comes down to when do the assets need to be replaced and what's the economic time at which to do that transfer, and so that will help the line come down. And we're already seeing some businesses say, well, LNG is going to be the gas that I'll use in the future, so I will jump to the next slide. So we've got support package available for natural gas business users in the North Island. At the start, we have a walkthrough assessment for the smaller energy users. There is a minimum energy spend of about $10,000 on that walkthrough assessment, up to about $1 million. Fully funded program by EECA, so that our SME businesses have a better understanding as to what the alternates are. And we do also look for some energy efficiency. So picking up on Marcus's point, we're seeing typically somewhere between 15 and 30% energy savings opportunities from the walkthrough assessments that have been completed so far. And then for those that need a little bit more in-depth, we're already partway on the journey. We have type 3 energy audits and feasibility studies to help better understand what that transition to a low carbon fuel or renewable fuel into the future is. Information's on our website. Happy to have a chat or get one of the team to have a chat if this is something that is of interest to you as a gas user in the North Island. Jumping to the next slide. LNG and the future of energy. So I'm sure we all saw the Prime Minister announce that the government is keen to progress looking at LNG as import fuel into New Zealand out of the New Plymouth terminal. And from my past life, know that that's quite a good connection point, because there used to be a large power station in the port. And so the interconnection point for connection looks great. I am enjoying reading news feeds at the moment, because every day there seems to be another article or another couple of articles around LNG and whether that's the right option for New Zealand into the future. The Prime Minister, in announcing it, and the Minister of Energy have talked about it being dry year risk security. I found this particular excerpt from the article that I've listed there has been interesting in terms of the assessment of where that pricing might sit. And there's lots of rhetoric and lots of information about global pricing of LNG and the volatility of that. I guess the one point of caution I would say, if you're looking at those LNG indices, is someone's got to buy it and then someone's got to and bring it into New Zealand, which means they want to put a margin on it and then sell it to either a gas generator or maybe feed it into the gas pipeline. And if you are a business sitting there wondering about that being your replacement fuel for natural gas as those supplies deplete down, as Marcus said, the price of it isn't going to be any cheaper than natural gas that we have today. And there is the risk of volatility on the world markets, which, if we look at other fuels brought into New Zealand, whether that's fuel that powers the vehicles that many of us drive, or LPG, for those that don't have natural gas available and using LPG, the price is volatile depending on what happens on the global market and simply gets passed through. I think there's lots more stories to be read, lots more announcements on the future of LNG. And for those that are thinking it might be the fuel for them into the future, just balance that with, if it is primarily for a dry year risk, does that mean in the years where there is no dry year risk, like we see at the moment, where the lakes are full and there's lots of available water to generate, if there's no LNG coming in to cover that dry year risk, does that mean there is any available to industrial users in the system? Don't know the answer to that today. Like many of you, reading with interest to see how this develops and shapes over the coming months. Let's jump to the next slide. Thanks, Mason. And so Marcus touched on the solar on farms demonstration. Minister of Energy Simon Watts did a ribbon cutting at one of the successful farms out of that program Friday a week ago. But like the vehicle to grid, there's lots of information, lots of data that is going to come through that's going to help us shape up how the farming sector, and we have many different types of farms, as the pictorial on the right shows at the bottom corner there, how we can help that sector, but also use that information across other sectors, industry, commercial buildings, as we get better data to understand what that rolls out. And the most common question that we get at this point is, where do I apply to be in the next wave of funding? This is a demonstration. We have enough participants in this wave of the program, and at this point in time, there is no intention to roll a second wave out. So at this point, we don't need a bunch of applications for a fund that doesn't exist. But that's not to say that tomorrow's world looks different, different funding streams, or we might uncover some challenges as part of this demonstration that we need to address in different ways. And so this forum is quite a good way to keep abreast of what that might look like, and I will get to that in a couple of slides' time. Lots of great information on our website on this program if you want to get into the detail. Jumping to the next slide. Straight to that point, we have a page on our website which lists our current tenders and RFPs. And so Caroline talked about the next wave of vehicle to grid, which is vehicle to anything, I think is what we're calling it, which is the interest in participating in that. We're also out with an RFP looking at information on AI tools, products and services. We've just recently closed a couple in the woody biomass space, and the team are busy working through the tender evaluation and starting to talk to some of those successful out of that process, but it is very early stages. So if you're waiting on that, just hold space a little bit longer. It's a great page. I'd have to say it's a little bit challenging to find it. So when you're on the EECA page, just type tenders and RFPs or tenders into the search on the top right with the little magnifying glass, and it'll take you straight to that page. Every time we go to market, that page is updated. And so if I think about the statement on solar and farms, if we were doing anything different into the future, this is the page that tender would be on, but we would bring any information through this market update to you. And going to the next slide, we're into the Q&A. So I maybe ask the EECA presenters to turn on your cameras, and I'm going to be a little bit naughty and pick on a couple of them. So Vince, I'm sure there's one in there that you'd like to answer verbally rather than in writing. So if you want to come off mute and just click on the answer live question so that person can be there and start talking to that question.
I'll pick that one up. So this is a question from Margarita talking about how to incorporate price signals around DF across EDBs, generators and retailers. And I think that what we is a useful thing to note is that just earlier this week, the three regulators sent an open letter to EDBs clarifying their expectations around how EDBs will treat demand flexibility relative to their more traditional investment approaches. And I think that the core of that really is that the regulators expect that where DF makes sense and will save money and provide the same service, that the EDBs will consider that properly in their decision making. And I think that the same thing will also start to apply to generators and retailers. So where they're facing risk or where they are facing investment cost, that they will start to look at DF as a viable alternative, particularly if we can start to clarify what it can do and how much it will cost and how much value it will provide. So there's two sides here. One is it needs to sort of prove itself, but also it needs to be given a chance to prove itself. And that's really what we're working on right now with some of our projects.
Thanks, Vince. Was there any other question that you wanted to pick up? You're on mute.
Yeah, just there was just one around households. So yeah, I mean, households do kind of contribute to peak a little bit because their winter peaks are sort of much higher than their summer peaks and that sort of thing, mainly because of heating. But they're not the only problem. And so we do need to sort of look beyond households for DF and particularly where if you've got say large industrial loads that could be interrupted without really doing much, without getting in the way of what the business is trying to do, then that's going to be a much lower cost intervention than rolling something across a bunch of households. But yeah, I guess a key point to make here too is that there's a few comments when we published this report around EECA wants people to cook their dinner in the middle of the night or something like that, or they're looking for businesses to shut down. And we want to be absolutely clear that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about everybody getting the energy that they want and need, but where you can possibly use it at a slightly different time, then that's what we want to unlock.
Caroline, was there any question unanswered that you wanted to jump in and talk to live? And those are perfectly fine answer, of course. I do see, while Caroline's looking at those questions, I do see a number of questions that we will type answers to after the session. See, as an example, I see one from Ewan, and so we'll just type the answer in for everyone to see that because it'll be a link to a page. I just actually will give Ewan a shout out on the great work at Silverstream landfill. Yeah, it is a great circular economy. There is gas recovery from the landfill generating electricity, and the team at Hutt City Council have electrified some of the yellow fleet on site and trucks coming into the site as part of refuse collection. So it does feel like a lovely circular economy. Great for you to have been leading that work and get buy-in from the council to make that project happen. Caroline.
I was going to say I was going to actually answer Ewan's comment, but we will type something in as well. And that was just to note that we do have whilst we have a smart charger whitelist which EECA has prepared, which is basically like an approved product list for chargers. Now that does not include at the moment vehicle to grid chargers, but we are looking at producing some specific information on that. So don't have it yet, but we will put something together. And I also thought, the one above that, Tony, he's noted that he said that vehicle batteries have a limited cycling capability. Are we looking at that as part of the trial, I think? And I guess we are interested in that point. I think the evidence is pretty mixed, and actually I think some of the evidence we have is that it doesn't really have, when well managed, cycling vehicle to grid type charging doesn't really have a negative effect on batteries. That said, that is something that we're interested in exploring more. So
Caroline. Look, I was expecting there to be a number of questions on LNG, and I can see a couple in the chat, and there was a lot of nervousness pointed at me around talking on LNG because it isn't actually EECA's mandate, but we are trying, particularly the programs that the team I lead, with businesses, trying to make sure that people are in an informed space. And so I see Phil Getty, Winter's got a question there around emissions and very mixed messaging from government. So MB is actually leading the government work on LNG. EECA's interested in providing advice and support in the background to the stuff that they're taking up. So Phil, it is a question that is better directed through MB as the owner across government of the LNG program. I also see there's a question from Andy Logue. G'day, Andy, around the ability to store the gas. I guess I'll take a really simplistic view in that if LNG does land in New Zealand, it talks about, in one option, having a vessel as the storage facility and bringing another vessel alongside and transferring the product from the vessel that's sailing to the vessel that's the floating dock. And by default, that becomes the storage facility to then turn that liquid back into a vapor and inject it into the network from a very simplistic non-engineering view. So that will provide some of the storage. I'm loving the great stories that are in the media every day. I was reading an interesting article around Genesis looking at gas storage and how that stacks up against LNG. As I say, there's just more information from lots of people that have been in the energy industry writing great information. I do also hear a lot of noise about people saying there's a lot of self-promotion for the solution that they favour or otherwise, but there is a lot of people just actually writing great information into the market. I think at this point, unless Vince or Caroline have got a question that they want to jump in and answer that's coming through, might give you back 7 or 8 minutes in your day so that you can prepare yourself if you're jumping into a meeting at 12 and debrief, take your head out of the space and the great information we've shared with you. As we said at the start, we will be sending out a recording and answers to the questions. And as I always say, if there's something that we can specifically, or you want to have a conversation, please feel free to reach out to myself, or if you're already engaged with one of the regional managers, reach out to them. They are all online watching this webinar as well. So on that note, I just say thank you for taking this hour out of your day. Thanks for those that have put the questions in, and some of them will come back to you directly for a little bit more conversation, as well as putting general answers to all of the questions and feed that back out. Thanks very much, everyone.